For me, forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? Bell hooks. The greatest movement for social justice our country has ever known is the civil rights movement, and it was totally rooted in a love ethic. Bell hooks. In general, the mass media tell us that black people are not loving, that our lives are so fraught with violence and aggression that we have no time to love. Bell hooks. Life-transforming ideas have always come to me through books. Bell hooks. There is no life to be found in violence. Every act of violence brings us closer to death. Whether it's the mundane violence we do to our bodies by overeating toxic food or drink, or the extreme violence of child abuse, domestic warfare, life-threatening poverty, addiction, or state terrorism. Bell hooks. I will not have my life narrowed down. I will not bow down to somebody else's whim or to someone else's ignorance. Bell hooks. Love is a combination of care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust. Bell hooks. If we give our children sound self-love, they will be able to deal with whatever life puts before them. Bell hooks. Death is with you all the time. You get deeper in it as you move towards it, but it's not unfamiliar to you. It's always been there, so what becomes unfamiliar to you when you pass away from the moment is really life. Bell hooks. It's in the act of having to do things that you don't want to that you learn something about moving past the self. Past the ego. Bell hooks. I feel that my environment reflects my belief in the grace and art and elegance of living simply. Bell hooks. A major part of love is commitment. If we are committed to someone, if I'm committed to loving you, then it's not possible for me to fall out of love. Bell hooks. Whenever women struggle with breast cancer and face better care than ever, that's feminism. Bell hooks. No other group in America has so had their identity socialized out of existence as have black women. When black people are talked about, the focus tends to be on black men, and when women are talked about, the focus tends to be on white women. Bell hooks. The ethic of liberal individualism has so deeply permeated the psyches of blacks of all classes that we have little support for a political ethic of communalism that promotes the sharing of resources. Bell hooks. I thought about how we need to make children feel that there are times in their lives when they need to be alone and quiet, and to be able to accept their aloneness. Bell hooks. You can only realize change if you live simply. Once people want enormous success, you can hardly do social change. Bell hooks. Every terrorist regime in the world uses isolation to break people's spirits. Bell hooks. Live simply so that others may simply live. Bell hooks. An often repeated assertion in the body of film criticism I have written is the assertion that movies do not just mirror the culture of any given time, they also create it. Bell hooks. We judge on the basis of what somebody looks like, skin color, whether we think they're beautiful or not. That space on the internet allows you to converse with somebody with none of those things involved. Bell hooks. To live fixated on the future is to engage in psychological denial. It is a form of psychic violence that prepares us to accept the violence needed to ensure the maintenance of imperialist, future-oriented society. Bell hooks. I have created a lifestyle that supports contemplation, service to words. Bell hooks. Until the legacy of remembered and reenacted trauma is taken seriously, Black America cannot heal. Bell hooks. The political core of any movement for freedom in society has to have the political imperative to protect free speech. Bell hooks. Some people act as though art that is for a mass audience is not good art, and I think this has been a very negative thing. I know that I have wanted very much to write books that are accessible to the widest audience possible. Bell hooks. These days I wonder more and more why people are pessimistic when American history actually supports optimism. Bell hooks. I love my family, even as I critique their dysfunctionalities. Bell hooks. All the men I fall for seem to have a commitment problem. Bell hooks. Any society based on domination supports and condones violence. Bell hooks. The political core of any movement for freedom in society has to have the political imperative to protect free speech. Bell hooks. Certainly, we can end racism with love. We can demand that the federal government change its emphasis on the racial distinction. Bell hooks. I think black people need to take self-esteem seriously. Bell hooks. I'm such a girl for the living room. I really like to stay in my nest and not move. I travel in my mind, and that's a rigorous state of journeying for me. My body isn't that interested in moving from place to place. Bell hooks. The people I love, I'm committed to loving for the rest of my life. Bell hooks. Class is more than money. Class is also about knowledge. Bell hooks. I don't think you can hate anything that you know intimately. There is no fine line separating love from hate because there's a deep chasm separating love from hate. Bell hooks. I feel like there is always something trying to pull us back into sleep, that there is this sort of seductive quality in all the hedonistic pleasures that pull on us. Bell hooks. Blacks who lack a proper killing rage are merely victims. Bell hooks. I think the women's movement has had a major impact on everybody's lives in our nation and in the world as a whole. Bell hooks. The institutionalization of black studies, feminist studies, all of these things, led to a sense that the struggle was over for a lot of people and that one did not have to continue the personal consciousness raising and changing of one's viewpoint. Bell hooks. All over the world, young males and females, schooled in the art of patriarchal thinking, are building an identity on a foundation that sees the will to do violence as the essential way to assert being. Bell hooks. I think I was always obsessed with aesthetics. Bell hooks. I began writing a book on love because I felt that the United States is moving away from love. Bell hooks. I'm so disturbed when my women students behave as though they can only read women, or black students behave as though they can only read blacks, or white students behave as though they can only identify with a white writer. Bell hooks. I've written 18 books, mostly dealing with issues of social justice, ending racism, feminism, and cultural criticism. Bell hooks. I have always been a flirt. My mother says when I was a child, I used to stand outside the house and just smile at everyone who walked by. Like, please take me with you. Bell hooks. My idea of a delicious time is to read a book that is wonderful. But the ruling passion of my life is being a seeker after truth and the divine. Bell hooks. I think life experiences are different for people who know what they want as children. Bell hooks.